Welcome to BIV Today, the podcast from the Newsroom of Business in Vancouver. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. LifeSciencesBC, the umbrella organization for British Columbia's rapidly developing life sciences sector, has a new board chair, and Ardakani is a biotech executive with vast experience in bringing projects from the vision of a scientist all the way into the market. I thought it would be a good time for us to catch up on the sector and what its outlook is like. We haven't talked in a long time about life sciences on this podcast. So welcome to the program. Thanks a lot. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me, Kirk.
In terms of economic impact, of course, it's a fast growing and significant sector, but I want to get some thoughts from you to start off on what you think the life sciences sector and its growing impact is having in terms of the culture of industry in British Columbia.
Well, this is a really critical time. I think, especially post-COVID, globally, we found out that healthcare and healthcare innovation is critical for society to be able to function properly. And this doesn't escape us in BC either. British Columbia was able to play a very important role, both locally and globally. I think you can say the culture has evolved from companies that used to innovate with one product and bring one product to market to companies that have significant and impactful platforms that can change the way we transform medicine and be able to transform patient and healthcare. And BC has played a front seat role in that.
The culture that it also has, it seems to me, is one of like a grand enthusiasm right now. I mean, where a lot of other sectors are established and you might call them stabilized somehow in a particular way, but maybe with a bit of a ceiling. Life sciences to me feels like something that just still has this, there's no particular ceiling to it. And I wonder what that does in terms of the kind of day by day energy that you feel in the sector, both as an executive and now running a board that oversees it.
You're absolutely right. So if you look at it across Canada, not just BC, the biotech sector is fairly nascent compared to places like Boston and San Francisco that are established. However, I could tell you BC is getting there. And the reason you're feeling the enthusiasm is because we think we have limitless potential. You can see that with the work that AbCellera did, and now they've broken ground for a massive facility in terms of antibody discovery. You can see with the work that Lipid Nanoparticle Group out of UBC, headed by Peter Cullis, and all the companies associated with him, like Acuitas, who developed the lipid nanoparticle for Pfizer vaccine. And then, of course, the cell and gene therapy from Peter Zandstrad, UBC, headed by him, company that was launched called Notch Therapeutic. You're absolutely right. We're in the renaissance. I would say we're in the renaissance of development of novel and exciting transformational medicines that's taking place in British Columbia. And history is taking right in front of our eyes. I think in a few years, you're going to see some breakthrough medicines that's been discovered here.
Do you think it took the pandemic to make this place appreciate and encourage the life sciences sector in the same way?
It's the old saying, success is preparation meeting opportunity. I think for many years, for over a couple of decades, we were getting prepared for this without really knowing it. And when the pandemic hit, probably we were one of the more prepared jurisdictions in terms of solutions we could bring in, whether it was digital health by companies like Thrive, whether it was AbCellera developing the first monoclonal antibody treatment for COVID, and of course the lipid nanoparticle, which brought vaccines to millions of people. We were prepared. We didn't even know we're being prepared, but we were prepared. We knew that we had sound science. We knew that we had the best working on truly amazing solutions. But when the pandemic hit, I think we were probably one of the luckier jurisdictions to be prepared.
Yeah. We'll often think, by virtue of where we are, that when there's a development here, that we must be world beaters. We must be world beaters. And then you find out, oh no, there are bigger places, there are stronger places, there are even smarter places doing something that we thought was actually at it. Can you tell me though, do you have that confidence now in the sector that what British Columbian science and tech is doing in this field is actually now at the forefront globally?
I think on a number of areas we are at the forefront. Of course, we can't lose sight that this is a competitive field, and what you develop is competed globally with the best of the best. We are competing with what comes out of Harvard and MIT. So, I think we are in certain areas, we certainly are the best, and in certain areas we can become better. But for the size of our geography, for the critical mass we have, which is still fairly small, right?
You bet. Yeah.
Compared to a lot of larger jurisdictions out there, I think we definitely punch above our weight in terms of how much impact we have. What we have going for us is, I can tell you, and I've been told by people from other places across Canada and the United States, is that we have a very collaborative community. When you look at organizations like Admare Innovations, you look at all the hospitals, universities, BC Cancer Agency, the biotechs that are grown out of here, we have a very tight community that really sticks together, and we try to bring the best by helping each other out, and that's really helpful.
Yeah, I think some people would be really interested to know the role of the board in all of this, because some boards operate quite aggressively in terms of neighboring the operation of the firm that's underneath it or the organization underneath it. Some really take a view from 5,000 feet and do that. You're the chair now. You've been you know the board very well. What do you see as the role of the board at this juncture for the sector? What can it do best, and what should it kind of leave alone?
Sure. So I've been fortunate to be part of the board since 2017, and I became vice chair in 2018. So, and I've been part of the executive committee for the last, 4 years. Our job is to enable the management team of LSBC be able to serve our ecosystem the best. This is a volunteer board, and we have a fairly broad stakeholder at the board. We've got people that represent universities, we've got people that represent biotechs, we've got people that represent digital health, medtech companies. We are very unique as a society that we represent a very broad spectrum of what touches life sciences compared to some other organizations across Canada. Mm-hmm. So our board is to just make sure the team at LSBC has all the resources to serve our ecosystem the best. We bring in a mosaic of input and opinions to make sure everyone is well heard, and we can address the challenges that we have. We have a lot of opportunities, but I can tell you, we also have our own challenges as an ecosystem, so that as any other ecosystem out there. So we want to make sure we are better prepared to help our ecosystem grow faster and better.
I think I'm going to touch on two of those challenges here in my questions. The first one, but I think one that probably you're experiencing a great deal of improvement with, would be the relationship with government, and how governments have also cottoned on to the importance of the life sciences sector, of course, but secondly, it has become more sophisticated in how it intervenes, what incentives it provides, which ones it doesn't provide, in order to try to find the best way of expending public finance in order to have some kind of a high impact in the sector. What have you seen there, Ali, over the last number of years in terms of how would I put it, an evolution, I guess, of how governments are dealing with the sector?
So I can tell you, we used to have a trip to legislature once a year, and I've been part of that since 2017. Certainly, I think we find the government to be more receptive than ever. Again, we found them receptive before COVID, and we've found them much more receptive now. They know the impact we're making. We are having a labor market assessment done right now to understand how big is our ecosystem, in terms of the impact we have both socioeconomically, scientifically, on British Columbia. I think this is going to really help the government understand and appreciate what we're trying to do better.
Every government seems to want an economic impact understanding before it basically shells out, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's understandable, and something like this with this magnitude had never been done before. So we're excited to be doing that, and it's a fairly sizable project in terms of the number of stakeholders involved, and the kind of report that's going to come out, I think, will be tremendously helpful to everybody. Over 20,000 jobs in British Columbia are related to the work we do and in our ecosystem. So, and these are all fairly high-paying job that most of these people have, advanced degrees. So the work that's being done is definitely impactful for the society.
Yeah. The second area is one I think almost every industry is experiencing right now, which is how do you find the talent? How do you find the talent? How do you not just recruit it, but how do you retain it? And I'm sure you've heard, you read it in the news. Vancouver's an expensive place. So what is the sector experiencing there in terms of its own challenge?
So talent is very interesting. I personally believe talent is the most important part of innovation. If you have good talent, you can take any technology and make it successful. But if you have very good technology and you don't have talent, the chances of that technology not succeeding is fairly high. That's my personal opinion. And I've seen it over and over again. So we are competing globally, both on quality and quantity for talent. There are specific areas that I know certain companies in British Columbia are desperately looking for the right talent, because our sector is highly specialized. So I'll give an example. If you need someone who has developed a certain drug that with a certain class, with a certain manufacturing criteria, there's probably a handful of people in the world who've done that. That's not something that you could quickly bring someone and train them. It's experiential based. So
sure.
You have a company, you've raised capital, and you're looking for this executive that can help you with what they call CMC, which is chemistry, manufacturing control. It's an important part of how you make a drug to fit, the guidelines of Health Canada and FDA. And you find this person in Boston or San Francisco, you need to attract them to come to British Columbia. People realize, people have to understand everyone has a family. So they look around. We have a handful of companies, but we don't have hundreds of companies. Right. So if this company becomes successful, you'll probably get acquired. Very few companies, unfortunately, last year. Now we're hoping AbCellera will be an anchor company that will last a long time. But most biotechs that British Columbia and other places across Canada and a lot of other smaller jurisdictions build get acquired by larger companies. So if you look at it from a talent perspective, this executive is looking at it and says, the outcome for me to move here is two things. Put aside the fact that it's expensive real estate. Let's assume he can afford real estate. If I move here and the company is successful, it's going to get acquired. I have to look for something else. Are there other companies here that I can, transplant to? And if it's not successful, the outcome is the same. So it's challenging. It's getting much better than I can tell you about 10 years ago, 2012, 2013. I moved back from New York around 2014, 15. The ecosystem was not as thriving as it is now. It's
I guess I get it. Yeah, at some point you have a tipping point, don't you, where there is enough of a mass of companies that that if you actually that there's mobility inside the market.
Exactly. So
that's the thing, right?
Yeah. We have now venture capitals like Amplitude, who have 3 people full-time in Vancouver. They've got an office in Vancouver. They're creating a number of companies in Vancouver. This is new. We didn't have that kind of presence before. I believe Lumira has someone here. These are major VCs. We still don't have, and I wrote an article about this a couple of years ago, that we need more investors in British Columbia, out of British Columbia, supporting British Columbian companies. It's getting better, but I think a lot more work needs to be done.
Isn't it also just that we need a way to try to have these companies anchor here, isn't it? I mean, for stability of a thing where you then can start attracting more and more satellite companies. You have to have these anchored ones. And you mentioned Epcellera, and of course it's a fantastic success story. 5 years ago, nobody even thought about it, but now, of course, we almost seem to be pinning some hope on a place like Epcellera to be the attracting body for all of it. How are we, and what do we need? I guess is what my question is. What do we need to keep companies here?
This is a function of markets and free economy, both fortunately and unfortunately.
So you're going to tell me we can't do it?
No, I think it's doable. So, I mean, if you look at a company like Eli Lilly, it's out of Indianapolis, which is not a biotech hub by all means, but it's a company with over $100 million market cap. It's one of the major global pharmas. They have a lot of partnerships actually with companies in and around British Columbia, but they have in their corporate structure, they have something that they cannot be acquired by another company, and it's something that it turns out an investment that was made by state. They cannot be sold. So there are ways where the government can create incentive or disincentivize a company to get acquired by someone else. But this needs to be done carefully, so it doesn't become a hindrance for the growth of
because no investor wants to think there's a poison pill at your company, right? I mean, they'd like to think that you're still, that maybe if good times work out for you, that you could move it. But I wonder whether it is for you a critical question when people are going through this dilemma of whether to move. Like, gee, you seem so small. I'm not going to be there very long. I'll be there for three summers, and that'll be it, or something.
Yeah, no, I think, as I said, it's getting better. I mean, you need to understand that my own personal advisory investment company, we've been able to bring on board a number of American executives to move to Canada and BC and work here. This is a phenomenal place to raise a family. It's safe, it's clean, it's got a phenomenal access to nature. So there are advantages as a geography that we need to play hard to attract this. And we're seeing it is getting better for people, or easier to sell the idea that British Columbia is a phenomenal place to move and work. And when people see success stories, especially in specific areas that we have really good strength, you'll see a lot more people hopefully moving here. And once you have great talent moving here, it's a catch-22. Talent moves, capital moves, and innovation thrives.
Yeah. Last area I want to talk about, and it is more to do with the outlook of it. And I don't want to talk too much about impediments, because I think we've talked a little bit about that. But tell me a little bit about your own belief in where this sector takes us as a province. We know that we have to deal with resource extraction and our economy as something upon which we depend, because it can be very cyclical, and we know that in some cases with our resources, society is pushing harder and harder all the time to have less and less dependence on some of our things like fossil fuels. So we need other economic engines in order to grow our province. How much of a factor do you think is life sciences going to be in this? Because as you noted, these are highly skilled jobs. These are jobs that require advanced degrees in many cases. That require almost a different kind of employee that what we've been generating at times out of our schools. But if you had to look at the vision for this and what your prospects are and what your ambitions are for a sector like this over the next 10 to 20 years, what would it look like?
And I'm speaking for myself. I haven't run this vision specifically by our society, but I'm hoping
we can run it right here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm hoping in the next 5 to 10 years we'll be one of the top 5 geographies in North America for life sciences development, and that would mean, if someone is looking around to create a company, we would be one of the top 4 or 5 jurisdictions they would look at to say, you know what, I want to build my company in BC. It's got phenomenal universities. It's got good access to talent. Obviously, capital is already flowing, so capital probably won't be an issue. And I want my family to live here. This is the best place to live. And in terms of, it was very important what you said. We need to be able to grow our economy from a number of different angles, whether it's tech, whether it's life sciences, whether it's digital economy. All of these things are important. This is the future of growth and economy. You can't be extracting resources and fish to grow your economy forever. I think that's a bygone era. We need to look at what's the future. When you think about the economic value that one can create by a discovery that can go out there and, serve billions of people in terms of the vaccine that's been out there, 3.5 billion doses have been distributed. That's significant. And you will not be able to make anything out there in terms of resources or anything like that have such an impactful effect.
And we likely will need more of those successes to win the world over, though, right? I mean, because that is one thing when you're punching above your weight. People don't take your weight class all that seriously at the start. So I guess there's a challenge there ahead of you. We've had a great conversation. I really thank you. I hope we'll talk regularly on this podcast.
Looking forward to it, and I hope to bring more good news every time we talk to show that we are on that trajectory to become one of the top 5 jurisdictions for life sciences development.
Well, as somebody on a couple of volunteer boards, I can tell you, they definitely get their money's worth out of me, but I'm sure they get their money's worth out of you too. So, Ali Ardakani, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Best of success this year as the chair.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm Kirk LaPointe. I'm publisher of editor and editor-in-chief of BIV. Thanks a lot for watching.